Hi, welcome to Three Common Garden Pests and Their Treatments. This is a short mini course just to help you as a gardener deal with the three of the most common anyway. Each person in a different area might have a different pest that they have to deal with, but as far as I have seen with my gardening friends and myself, these three pests that we're going to talk about today are a major problem for most people, if not every season, at least at some point in their gardening journey. So we're going to talk about these three today and how to handle it. And so first, before we get into how to kill the bugs, how to deal with those, I want to talk about our mindset towards insects in the garden and insects in general, I guess. Not every bad is a bad bug, and it's not by a long shot. It's actually only about 2% on average of the insects we encounter are actually damaging to our gardens or our plants. Now, those 2% can certainly give us a lot of trouble, but as you can see, it's not every bug. So we don't have to be in an alarmed state every time we see a bug in the garden. And then also, we just have to look at it as a whole ecosystem. And we're a part of that, and our garden is a part of that ecosystem. It's not isolated. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing because the insect world benefits us by and large, like the bees and then the different things that live in the soil and all of that. We need the ecosystem. And so what we're looking for is balance. If we've got an infestation of any kind of bug, not just these three bugs we're going to talk about, but if we have an infestation of bugs, it's usually a sign that something is out of balance, or else the bugs couldn't thrive that way. The bad bugs couldn't thrive like that. So we want to bear that in mind. If you see something going on in the garden, instead of just thinking immediately, let me kill these bugs, you want to think about what is causing these bugs to thrive and to multiply. And then, in the same thought process, if you killed every bad bug, then what would the good bugs that eat those bugs do? So if you killed every aphid, what would the ladybugs eat? If you killed every worm, what would the birds eat? Because the birds eat a lot of the worms and the caterpillars. So balance is key, keeping the pest populations at a minimum or at least at a level that the whole entire crop isn't destroyed. That is our goal, is to keep things in balance and keep things thriving. And plants will still produce even if they have pressure from pests and different things like that. And sometimes they'll produce better because they've been a little bit threatened. And a a plant's goal is to reproduce, especially if it's an annual. And a great deal of our vegetable crops and things like that are annuals. A lot of our seasonal color, those are annuals. Those plants are annuals, meaning they have 1 year. They have 1 year to grow, produce, make seeds, make more of themselves, and then they die. So they are doing their best to reproduce. If things are too perfect, if the soil is too perfect and the temperature is just right and all of that, they might not bloom as well. They might not produce as many tomatoes or as many corn, ears of corn, things like that, because it's just too perfect and they don't feel the pressure to get it done. And so part of what bad bugs do when they come in and bite and start to feed, that lets the plant know there's a threat. And so the plant can actually respond within its own um, plant body to ward off those pests. A healthy plant will do that. And then also they think, and as far as a plant thinks, but chemical responses are, I need to get these seeds made before this bug kills me. So bugs have a purpose. There's a reason why they're here. The problem is that when things get out of balance. So we're going for balance. And then also I need y'all to think about whenever I talk about organic controls, we're not necessarily talking about homemade. Sometimes that works. Like the example on the screen is a bucket of soapy water can do the trick. We kill wasp nest and things like that with soapy water. They use soapy water a lot on the stink bugs if we've got a problem. And that works. It's the Dawn acts as a suffocant, which is a legitimate thing to do. But if you're really having a problem, you might want to go ahead and go with something made by people who know what they're doing. And so there are a lot of good brands out there, and I don't have any to endorse in this video or anything like that, but are very good organic controls available at your garden stores, and then also the people that work at the garden stores can help you. And I advocate always for organic approaches because we want to work within the ecosystem, not try to just simply control it. So I like organic approach, and that's what I'm going to present to y'all today is organic approaches to these problems. Okay, so first up, aphids. Aphids come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. But I guarantee you that there's at least one kind of aphid in your garden right now because they're just very prevalent. It's just what they do. They're small, little soft-bodied insects, as you can see on the screen. They can be a range of different colors, but they all feed in the same way. They pierce the stems. They have a little snout at the end of their mouth parts, and they pierce the stems and leaves and the flowers, and they suck out the the juices, the saps, and all of that, and it's going to cause the plant a lot of stress. As you can see by the pictures, these are infestations, and they can really create a lot of problems. And then that also shows here that the aphids secrete honeydew, which is a sticky substance. It's their poop, and the ants love it. So the ants encourage the growth of the aphids and the sooty mold. So a lot of times when you find aphids on your plant, you'll also find ants not too far behind. So breaking that cycle can be a big benefit to taking care of the aphids as well. So that's what an aphid is. And then we're going to flip over here for the control. And so the organic treatments are companion planting, using plants like garlic, chives, marigolds. Basil is also a good one. Herbs have a very strong scent. Like we can smell them ourselves, and we're very large compared to an aphid. So imagine how strong the scent of an herb would be if it was right up next to that little bitty aphid body, and it would be overwhelming. So it discourages them from coming to that plant. And the insects in your garden are just like any other kind of living thing. We want to find a food source with the least amount of effort and problems as we can. And so aphids are the same way. So the companion planting helps because it makes it not an appealing place to land. They have natural predators, which are ladybugs and lacewings. Again, you're going to get the aphids first before the ladybugs and the lacewings appear because that's their primary food source. So the ladybug can't just hang out in the garden waiting on the aphid to appear because it would starve and die before that ever happened. So aphids are going to appear first, and then the ladybugs and the lacewings are going to come in after that. And the problem can be is if the aphid population gets too large, too fast before the ladybugs and lacewings show up, then you can really have a problem on your hands. And if that's going on, the two next or the three next suggestions will work. Neem oil is great. It can disrupt the aphid growth and the reproduction without harming the beneficial insects. Um, that's not to say that it's not completely harmless. You want to be careful about when you spray the neem oil. I don't like to spray neem oil in the mornings because it can affect the bees, the honeybees that come in to feed and to pollinate. So you want to, what I do anyway is I spray it in the evening. Most of the time, the bees have all gone home. They're back at the hives making honey, or they're back, doing what they do. So it's a good time to spray it in the evening when it starts to get close to sundown. And so then the neem oil will work overnight. It'll start to dissipate by the morning, and then everyone's good again. Insecticidal soap. That's kind of like what I was talking about by using Dawn, but they do actually make soaps for this purpose. And so those are great. And then a harsh spray of water. And I always thought this seemed so odd because if you knock the aphid off, won't it just crawl back up on the plant and bite it again? And in reality, no, they can't because that little snout we were talking about earlier, if you spray them with the harsh thing of water and knock them off, it damages that little snout. So now they can't crawl back up and feed on your plant. So a harsh spray of water will do the trick too sometimes. We'll knock them down. And then with any of these, if you have been using synthetic pesticides and things like that all along and really been hardcore managing your pest and not letting nature kind of find its balance, you might have a journey to get to a balance. Like you're going to have some populations of insects that spring up because they're not being controlled the way they had been with the synthetic poisons and things. So be patient. You have to look at this kind of as a long haul, the long game. You want to give these things time to work. Don't do it once and then say that didn't work and then look for something else. You have to stick to the plan and give it time to work. And sometimes that can be as long as two gardening seasons because some of your pests they overwinter or they lay larvae in the soil and so it's going to take you 2 summers to break that life cycle. And that's really what we're trying to do is break the life cycle of these pests so they can't just keep reproducing and making greater and larger populations. The key is to breaking a life cycle, not just killing the adult bug. So that's what we're going for. Oh, and then the grasshopper. Gotta love the grasshoppers, right? No, we don't. Not unless you're fishing. They make really great fishing bait. That's about the only good thing that a grasshopper is. And the chickens do enjoy them as well. But if you get a wave of grasshoppers in, they can decimate your crops, your flowers, your rose bushes, whatever, within hours. And that is really disheartening when that happens. So the best thing you can do for a grasshopper is to really have healthy soil because the healthier your plant, the less appealing it is to a grasshopper. And so, again, like we talked about, they want the easy meal. They're going to move on to the unhealthy plants so that they can eat those first. So, one of the key aids in keeping the grasshoppers down is to have healthy soil. And again, they love hot, dry conditions. Droughts tend to bring them on. You'll see a lot more if you have very sandy soils, then you probably deal with grasshoppers a lot because that's their favorite place to be. So in knowing that, try to create an environment that's not hospitable to them. Keep your beds mulched, keep your gardens watered, hydrate as best you can, and then again, have healthy soil, and that will really aid you in keeping the grasshopper populations down. Okay, a few other organic treatments. Um, Row covers. These physically block the grasshoppers from reaching the plants, and row covers are a very lightweight fabric. They're usually very breathable. The sunlight can get through and things like that. So the row covers are very good. And Nosema locustae is a biological control using a microsporidian parasite that infects and kills the grasshoppers. And these types of controls are very good. They're not really super fast. Again, you have to be patient. But grasshoppers are cannibals. And when a grasshopper dies, the grasshopper will eat. And another healthy grasshopper will eat the dead grasshopper. And what's cool about these the parasites is that it's in the dead grasshopper. And so then when the live grasshopper eats the dead grasshopper, it passes the parasites on. So then you get this domino effect working in your favor. So that's a great one. Diatomaceous earth it's a very fine powder. You can get all of these things can be bought through your gardening centers. And but diatomaceous earth, also called DE, it causes dehydration when the grasshoppers crawl over it. And I know it seems a little bit cruel, but if you've ever had your flowers and everything else eaten by a grasshopper, you're okay with it. You're like, that's just too bad. You shouldn't eat my plants. And then predators. Encourage natural predators like birds chickens to help control the grasshopper populations. The only challenge with using your chickens is that if the chickens have eaten all the grasshoppers, they'll also eat your plants and they'll scratch into your rows to get to the grubs and stuff in the soil, and then they can do a lot of damage as well. So chickens are not always your best option, but it is something that if you've got mature plants, your garden's at a very mature stage, you can let the chickens in to chase those grasshoppers down, and they will do a good job. And then also birds. I've had a lot of people ask me how to keep birds out of their gardens. And like again, we go back to any living animal wants to acquire its food in the easiest way possible. So if you put bird feed out in easy to reach feeders, the birds are going to eat the feed instead of eating your plants and your vegetables. If you put a water feature out that keeps water, like a bird bath or anything like that, um, if you have that near your gardens, the birds will drink out of the water instead of pecking your tomatoes to drink the water out of the tomatoes. A lot of times, the birds aren't actually after your crops. They're after a secondary item like the water. So if you put out bird feeders and water, they'll leave your vegetables alone, and then they will also those eat the different various grasshoppers and worms. So they're good for you. They're very good for you. Birds are your friends, even though you might have been led to believe otherwise. Okay, and then the last one is the blessed squash bug. Whenever I'm on my social media platforms, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, things like that. Uh, and I ask people about like, if you had a magic wand, what's the one thing you would get rid of in your garden? What's the one problem you'd get rid of? And it's squash bugs. There's is always at least, if not the number one, it's in the top five, guaranteed across, the gardening groups I'm in, they're across the United States. It's not just local to me in southern Louisiana or Texas. They're everywhere. So squash bugs, it says they primarily attack squash, pumpkins, and other members of the cucurbitáceae family, but I've had them on any plant I have in the garden. Like if they can't get one thing that they want to eat, they'll eat the rest of them. And again, they suck the sap from the leaves, causing them to wilt. They also spread various diseases through the plants. And so they're just really a problem. And one of the problems of them is that they are so hard to kill because they have an exoskeleton, meaning that their bone structure is on the outside. So there's not a lot of things that permeate it. They're not real susceptible to a lot of different poisons or anything like that. And then they can reproduce so fast that even if birds ate them, they couldn't keep up. So again, one of the biggest things you can do is to have healthy soil because healthy soil makes for healthy plants. And the healthier the plant, the least amount of damage. So let's definitely remember that. Okay, organic treatment. I love this one, hand picking. Yes, hand picking works, but if the squash bug population has gotten out of control, you would spend your entire day out there picking plants, picking bugs off the plants. So I like to pour soapy water over the infected plant, like Dawn. Dawn's just one of my best friends in the garden. And then that helps them, it'll cause them to also suffocate. So not just you picking them off, but they'll suffocate. It also flushes them up out of, say, the center of the plant or down by the soil where they may be hiding. And when you pour the soapy water in, they start coming out because they're trying to get to the air. And then that helps, and you can, knock them into a bucket of water or whatever so that you can catch them that way. Trap crops. Plant sacrificial crops like Hubbard squash, and this will help lure the bugs away from the squash you want to eat. They prefer the Hubbard squash, so they'll stay over there first. Um, this is probably not my favorite one. A lot of people have had success with it. I had just found that when they got done with the trap crop, they tended to kind of come over in to the ones I didn't want to eat, but it did give me time to harvest from my summer squash and zucchini and things like that before the Hubbard squash ran their course. So it does help and it does have its place. It's probably just not your first go-to thing to do. Neem oil again. Neem oil is a great tool. It'll help you in the garden with a lot of different problems. And so it helps with the squash bugs because it'll interfere with their growth and their reproductive cycles. And remember, We want to break their life cycle. So anything we can do that interferes with the reproductive cycle is what we want to do, because that's the best way to stop bugs from populating in your garden. And then beneficial nematodes. These are microscopic organisms that attack the squash bug larvae in the soil. This is the absolute best way to do it, because you're going to kill that squash bug before it ever becomes a bug. It won't be able to bite one squash plant if you kill it in its larva stage, and it won't be able to lay one egg if you kill it in the larva stage. So beneficial nematodes are great. You can usually can find those online and be able to get them that way. And so there we are, top three common pests in the garden and how to handle those pests in an organic method. And I want to invite y'all to join Holly's Herbal Community. That's over on school.com. That's a new platform. You might not have heard of it yet. It's really awesome because it's not really a social media platform. It is a hosting platform for people like me that want to create a community where people can get together, share ideas, talk about what they're growing. My main focus in the garden is herbs. I grow pretty much anything I can, as most gardeners do. I love it. But herbs are kind of like my sweet spot. And so if you're interested in talking about herbs in general gardening, pop over to Holly's Herbal Community. And you can either scan that QR code right there with your phone, or you can copy and paste that link there to it there that's under you're invited. You can copy and paste that too. So I hope you'll join me. It's a free community. We're having lots of fun over there. And there's no ads and there's no hackers and there's nothing like that. Um, it's a platform that it's set up differently. It's not free to me, but it's free to you. So that's great. But because it's not just free to anyone and everyone, like I pay to host it there. It means I have a level of security, and so do you. So we don't have to worry about all the ads. We don't have to worry about your account getting cloned or different things like that. So I hope you'll join me. It's great fun, and I'll talk to you soon.